Welcome to Exploring Possibilities. I'm your host, Cheryl Sitz. Since 2012, Mario Rosales of Tech Life Balance and I have been airing inspiring, insightful conversations with all kinds of change agents who are raising the vibration on our planet. It's the intention of our show to explore possibilities and shift perspectives in holistic, spiritual ways. You'll hear how various industry experts discover and share their deepest passions to make a bigger difference in the world. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. And do me a favor, please come back and rate the show so that new people can find us. We'll introduce our next guest in just a moment.
Have you ever gone to a social media seminar and you have the online experts telling you, get a blog, get a website, get on social media, all this other stuff? By the time you're done with that seminar, that online expert is very good at frying your brain. And the funny part is, you come back home, you get in front of the computer, and you're lost. Hi, I am Mario with Tech Life Balance. I see this all the time. You spend so much money and still don't know what is going on with your online presence. And you probably don't need all of that. Let me go ahead and translate Geek to English for you and show you what you really need, because you don't need it all. You probably only need a few components. You have a great message out there, and I would like to hear it, and I definitely want to help you put it out there. I am Mario Rosales with TechLifeBalance.net. I produce this podcast because I love distributing messages. Let me help you distribute your message.
Hi, it's your host, Cheryl Sitz. And when I'm not doing this podcast, I really enjoy coaching you on how you can have the life you really want. As creators of our own reality, there's a lot of ways that we can block ourselves, hold ourselves back, or just not get really clear on what it is we want. Once we do that, there is no stopping us. I'd love to help you do that. Get in touch with me at CherylSitz.com. Spring is in the air, and boy, has everything it seems like it's going super fast now. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Our spring digital magazine is out, and we've got some fun upcoming events like making your own dream catchers and some women's gatherings. And my personal favorite, 6 women are going to join me for 6 weeks in a commitment to reprioritize ourselves. Do you find yourself bumping yourself down the to-do list every day, or maybe just not getting around to those personal practices that you would like to maintain? Well, we're going to look at that. We're going to talk about how to build a daily practice that we can live more consciously and love ourselves better. Because all the talk in the world on these podcasts about conscious living is great, but until we bring it into our daily lives, it doesn't really transform anything. So that's what we're going to do together. You can find out details on all of this at journeyofpossibilities.com. Joining us today is Lynn McKenzie. She's an internationally acclaimed leader in animal communication and healing. The Animal Energy Certification Training is her signature program, and she also offers a free Connect on Demand webinar. We will have that linked directly to this podcast. It's called How to Master Animal Communication. Lynn McKenzie, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here.
I am so glad to have you. And I don't know. I think many of us are animal lovers, and I find myself as intuitive as I can be. I still struggle sometimes to understand what in the heck my cat wants or my dog wants. So I really look forward to you sharing some of that with us. But have you always had a connection with animals? How did this all get started for you?
Well, I think I was born this way in one respect, but when I was a child, it's funny because I was born to a mother who loves animals but isn't always, sometimes would have a fear. And when I was, 2 years old, I'd run up and start hugging German Shepherds and stuff, and she'd want to rescue me from them, but she'd be too scared, kind of thing. I always loved animals. I always talked about them. I was always connected with them. But I didn't really start doing this as a career until like the early 1990s. And I really started just opening up and studying and through different channels and really getting involved in it somehow that way. And it's just, it's just taken off it's what I was planted on this earth to do for sure.
That's so cool. Is there a favorite animal for you personally to communicate with, or just all of them?
Not really. I love horses. I don't have a horse now. I have had horses and shown horses, and I absolutely love horses. But I also, they all communicate equally. You know, when we communicate with animals, we're communicating with them at a soul level. So when at the soul level, all beings are really the same. So whether you're communicating with a cat or any being, they're all really the same at the soul level. So they're all interesting.
Yes, they are. Well, when I actually had an opportunity to go to Peru a few years ago and walk through some of the processes that we can learn to become more intuitive, one of the people there works with horses. And she said, Cheryl, if you can start to work with connecting with horses and sending them visual imagery, they respond very well to that. And I don't have horses available to me, so I did it with my cats, and it works just as well. I would find that if I visualized them moving in a direction, they would do that. They seem to respond really well to the unspoken word.
Yeah, there's something really interesting about horses, in general, but it's not to say, I always kind of highlight horses because there's such a connection there, but it's not to say that other animals don't. One of the things that I like about horses, just that helps people learn, and if you can get around horses a lot, I think I would. For a lot of years, I rode 2 horses a day. I rode my own horse, and I rode a horse for somebody else who needed it exercise, and I was young and, was exciting to me. This was an amazing horse that had actually been an event horse in the Olympics at one point in his life. So I just kept him, in shape. But what happens with horses is because they're prey animals, and they have a system in their herd, and literally, whatever's going on kind of goes through the herd like wind, literally, in the wild. Like, if there's a bunch of horses, there's one person who's like, one horse, calling a person, who looks out for the other horses, and when something happens, one horse starts running, and like, it just literally flies through the herd like wind, and they're all running. It's like they all have that message instantaneously, because it's how they survive, right? And so it's a sort of a different energy with dogs and cats and other animals, rabbits and whatever, but because they're not necessarily herd animals, but
right.
It's the same, and they're very in tune. And I just had one of my students tell me something this past week where she started my training program, and she started connecting with her dog, and her dog got so freaked out. Her dog actually ran a little bit, because it was like so startling, because she hadn't been communicating with her dog on that level in so long, and it just kind of was shocking to the dog for a minute.
That's so cool. So what tends to inspire the people that come to work with you to want to connect with their pets at a different level? What are some of the stories that you hear of why people come?
There's kind of a theme. It's interesting, because most of the people who come tend to be women. Not that men can't do this or don't want to do this, but most of them who are women, and they're mostly women who are really on a spiritual journey and really wanting to transform and expand on one level within. So they really are searching themselves for inner transformation in their lives, but at the same time, they really want to know and understand their animal companions, both those that are on this plane, and sadly a huge amount are people whose animals are at the end stage of life or have recently crossed, and they want to maintain that connection, because I'm 100% believer in the fact that when the soul leaves the body, the soul does not end with the ending of the physical body. The soul lives on. It's not a physical piece, and there's absolutely the connection. So there's people that are really searching for that peace of mind and that continued connection from their animal companions that have crossed over, made their transition, whatever you want to call it. So I kind of liken it to transformation through the animals. It's kind of like the animal kingdom takes us on this really amazing transformation, and I believe it's one of their missions for being here.
You must be intuitive yourself, because that's really where I was going with this next is so tell me how you feel like that connection is, because you kind of touched on it, and that's what I'd like to explore a little bit. So there are guides in a way? Is that what you
yes.
see?
There's a couple pieces. Our animal companions come to us as part of our spiritual journeys. So they are here to nudge us and guide us in a certain direction. They're very much, if you've had an animal for any length of time and you look back on how your life is transformed during the time you've had that animal companion, they had a lot to do with it. I believe a couple things. I believe that they're here as a catalyst for us to sort of, I'm not thinking of the right word, but to kind of propel us a little bit along on our spiritual path and our journey of transformation, if we're willing, if we're the kind of, if we're not, they'll still be trying, but we might just be asleep and unconscious and not noticing. So there's that piece. I also believe that our animal companions are keepers of our soul's divine mission. So this is what I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and I've had, thousands of animals that I've connected with and communed with, and just hearing what my students share now, because mostly I'm devoted most of my time to teaching it. But what happens is they come here to help guide us to deeper into our soul's divine mission. So whatever it is that's the highest expression of your soul in this lifetime, your animal companions will guide you, sometimes gently and sometimes not so gently, towards that. And so they really, and like, I don't know how what your audience is, what kind of audience you have exactly. I didn't ask you that in advance, but it's what I found over time is it's really like they are completely in touch with our Akashic records. And if that's beyond...
No, that's our audience. You're on track. You're fine.
Yeah. I mean, some people would probably their eyes would start crossing right about now. But, so they have a real ability to access our Akashic records and really help us to fulfill what our soul came here to do. So it goes so much deeper than, your dog that you got to, so you'd have company at home and
right.
take something to take for a walk and a snuggle, some being to snuggle with while you're watching TV or whatever. It goes so much deeper than that. And, we really absolutely, many of us don't really think of that up front, but it's really how it happens.
That's so beautiful. I love that. And I have felt that with my animals. And it's funny because I will look at how I've evolved during the lifespan of a pet. And it's like, wow, yeah, I can't imagine what I would have been if you hadn't been here. So that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious. Yeah. I've been told, and I have kind of sensed that our animals also kind of, I don't know how to language this, take some of our pain, take some of our stuff. I've noticed, like, if a pet is with a sick person, then the pet starts getting sicker. Like, what is that? What is going on with that? Do you have an awareness around that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have some phenomenal stories about that. So they're when they're with us, they're constantly absorbing from us. They're like sponges. So, they absorb from us physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. They're really, their energy field and ours are kind of connected on some levels and even through chakras. And so basically they don't always, but they can take on our illnesses. And, it's sort of like our energy fields kind of merge. So whatever's going, and usually the root cause of many illnesses can be found in the energy field. So once they're kind of connected up with our energy field, that same issue can happen for them. So right. They will take on our emotions. They will take on, like I said, and I had a couple stories. One dog that I worked with years and years ago, the dog had, the lady's, I think it was her niece or her granddaughter, I can't remember right now. She was in Italy, but her let's just say it's her granddaughter. Her granddaughter had a cancerous brain tumor, and she was just a little girl like maybe 6, and she had been going through chemo, and she had had a bunch of treatments, and then she went to stay with her grandmother for a week or two, a couple weeks I think it was, just to kind of have a nice vacation and relax. And when she went back to be checked, she was her tumor was gone completely, and then the dog that was living there, a Cocker Spaniel, developed a tumor in the brain, weirdly enough, and that tumor was actually successfully operated on and was not cancerous, but it was like so uncanny. And I've actually had another situation where a golden retriever, it was a family with a little boy, and the golden retriever got leukemia and fought it and ended up crossing over. And soon after that, the 2-year-old boy got leukemia who was living in the house, and it was like the dog was absorbing it all from the child, so the child didn't have to have it. Mm-hmm. And then once the dog succumbed to the leukemia, the child ended up developing it because that being wasn't there to keep working on it. And there's thousands of these out there, thousands.
Wow. So if we realize this and we know that it's something within our control, and we notice that our pet is becoming sick very similar to the way that we've been sick, if we heal ourselves, we heal the pet, or does the pet continue? Is it two different healings that need to happen? How does all that play out? Have you seen that?
Well, so what I do is I teach people how to kind of clear their animals on a regular basis, so that it's like, I call it squeezing out the sponge. So as they're absorbing all this energy from us, and that we're releasing it from them on a regular basis, because they, as a rule, they come to us many times to help us. I mean, right. And there are different circumstances out there. I'm not one to say everything's always the same for everybody. That's definitely not the way it is. But I would definitely work with them and work on ourselves at the same time. I kind of think of it as two separate things, although we're joined. So, when the work that I teach people to do with their animal companions, it also heals them as they're doing it, and heals kind of the lineage, backwards and forwards in their family and the animal family. So it's kind of an interesting concept. But it really, I think of it kind of as two separate things, but based on the priority of each being, the living and the human and the animal.
I love that. Yeah, we have a lot of practitioners that listen to this show, and a lot of people on the holistic and spiritual path. So, yes. Like I do Reiki, and I do Reiki with my cat, and maybe there's something better I could be doing. I'm sure there probably is. But like when I notice that something's going on with him, I do the energy work with him as well as doing it with myself. And I think that's really interesting. Like you said, the backwards and forwards, and healing one heals both. We're all connected, mm-hmm. right? I mean, it's mm-hmm. not just us with our animals, it's with one another as well. So,
yep.
So what else can you kind of help people with that's a popular request? You mentioned at the beginning transitioned pets. Talk mm-hmm. about that a little bit. Like, how can that be helpful for us?
Yeah, that was when I was doing a lot more consultations. Now, like I said, I'm focusing a little bit more on running my programs and teaching and that kind of thing. But when I was doing more one-on-ones, pretty much my specialty, and it wasn't something that I even planned, it's just how it happened, was the death and dying process and the afterlife process of connecting with the animals and really making it, just healing the whole process. Animals come for the most part, one of their purposes is to help teach us about the circle of life, the death, and the rebirth. And it's something huge that we go through with our animal companions, because for most of them, our lifetimes are so much longer than theirs. Unless you have maybe a parrot or a tortoise or something, they might have a longer lifespan than us. Mm-hmm. But most of our animal companions that we choose to partner up with in this lifetime have such shorter lifespans than us, and it can be heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. And what I've noticed, though, is that there's a lot we can do to help the people and the animals through the transitioning, through communication and helping people with things that they can do for their animal companions. But one of the biggest things is really learning and understanding exactly what happens during the time of transition and how that soul is continuing on and connecting. And I do so many, and more in the past, connections with people whose animals have transitioned. And the healing is massive. Like, people will always say to me that they have such a huge feeling of peace after that. And it's so important for the people, because, so many people are really, really devastated when they've lost their animal companions. And, if I can share one example, when my golden retriever Jigs crossed over in 2007. He had been with me for 13 and a half years, and that's a pretty long lifetime for an 85-pound dog.
Mm-hmm.
It was the vet was telling me it was equivalent to like about 18 and a half to 19 years old. And he was in really good shape, and he was the catalyst for starting all this work. He literally, I had no idea when I got Jigs that any of this would happen. I was a very successful realtor. That's what I was planning to do. I wasn't planning to do anything like what I'm doing now. And Jigs actually nudged me into this direction, and and his whole life was about this. He actually gave me some of the processes that I teach. But what's interesting is when Jigs crossed over, it was heart-wrenching, of course. I mean, I'm single. He was my only family member.
Mm-hmm.
I lived with him, no other animals. And it was really hard, and I literally felt pain in my heart chakra. I mean, I didn't physically know that. I didn't know you could feel physical pain in your heart when you were grieving, because I hadn't really had to grieve anything major until that time. But knowing exactly what was going on and being able to connect with him made that whole transition so much easier. And, there are gifts. Just like there are gifts in birth, there are gifts in death as well. And it can be really hard for anyone to see those. And the animals, this is one of their biggest teachings, and it's as natural as birth, and somehow our society you seem to accept that part of life, or something. There's sort of a bit of a disconnect there for us. And it helped me immensely, and it really helped him. And now, and it allows me to help others who are going through that kind of process.
That's such a beautiful gift. And you're right. We don't prepare for our own death. We don't prepare for our pet's death. Even when we know it's inevitable, we have kind of funny in our society about death. So I'm glad that you touched on that. I had a cat that just disappeared. I mean, she would go inside, outside at will. And one day she just didn't come home. And ironically, it was on 9/11 last year. And she just never came back. And one day her brother just stopped getting up and looking out the door. And I knew then that something had happened, that she was gone. But whether it's that they disappear or whether it's that they die, we really do struggle with closure when we don't know how to communicate like that. So do you teach that now that you don't do the private consultations?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I do some private consultations, but not that many, just because my focus has been, I have a lot of students, all over the world, and my focus is really on that and keeping the programs as amazing as I can. So, but yes, the connection, the knowing, the not knowing is really hard for people.
Yeah.
When an animal actually gets lost, like disappears, as opposed to losing an animal that you have to take to the vet and it,
right.
Have it put to sleep, or it dies at your home, or whatever it is. Yes, and that can be very, the soul of that animal can if the animal has transitioned, can absolutely share a lot of information, or sometimes people have actually have lost an animal and they contact us. I have some senior associates as well. So sometimes they have lost an animal and they contact us, and we tune in, and we, sometimes we're able to help them reunite again. And, there's no guarantees, of course, because sometimes it's also a soul agreement. I truly believe, we come together by soul agreement, and I think the way we part too can be by soul agreement as well. And even though it might seem heart-wrenching on this plane, sometimes we've made these, we've made these connections, we've made these agreements before we've come to this plane on this lifetime, that we're in.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, and a friend of mine, she was struggling with, and I've been having conversations with my cat about this. When they get older, when is it time to do what? Do you want this treatment, or would you rather be put down, or would you rather wait and die naturally? Like, being able to get that information becomes so important.
Absolutely. And that's a big piece of this work, because, like, just to give you an example, years ago, I was working with someone, and their dog got cancer in the leg, and the vet suggested they had the leg amputated because that was the only way to save the dog. And it's interesting. So we asked one of the dogs, that this happened a couple times. We asked one of the dogs, and the dog was like, "Yeah, that's perfect. Go for it." And then I had another client with a Doberman. Sadly, each dog has their own, propensity to certain illnesses, and Doberman's bone cancer is a big one. And this Doberman had bone cancer, and what happens is one day it's running and the foot just shatters or something. The bone in the leg just shatters. And that she had asked me to talk to the dog, and the dog was like, no, I don't want my leg amputated. And it might have been the build of the dog or whatever, but so she just had to manage it very carefully. But we were able to connect with the dog on a regular basis because what her vet had said to her was, you don't want the dog's bone to shatter, due to the cancer, because that would be excruciating, and you're better off to, have the dog euthanized prior to that. But we could commune with them on all of this stuff and get their take on it, and it not only it's not only good information, because like one dog said yes to amputation of a leg and another dog said no, and how awful. Like imagine, if a human was faced with that and it was done without their
Right.
their consent, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's really nice to know that what the animal's on board with, and we can help them with so many things. When it comes down to chemo or any kind of invasive treatment, if they're elderly, do they want to go through that or not? And we're faced with all of this stuff as they get older.
I think that's beautiful. I love the work that you do. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
I love it too.
I can tell. I'm curious. Another thing that I would think that people would come to you for would be what they would deem as bad behavior in the animals. The pet keeps doing this, and no matter what I do, and if I don't get it under control, I'm going to have to get rid of the animal. I just can't have this anymore. What do you see that being behind that when you start to work with people who have animals who have these behavioral challenges?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. There's always something, and it can be different. And people do come to me about that. And I've had people come to me for things like, their sighthound chases rabbits. So it's like, okay, your dog was bred. This is what this breed does. So if you don't want a dog that chases things, don't buy a greyhound or something. I've had someone tell me their husky is pulling too much, and it's like, it's kind of good to research some of these things in advance.
Yeah.
They have that. My golden retriever, if he was off leash, no matter what, and there was water, he'd be in it. I could say anything.
Yes.
I could do anything. And he was one of the top in his obedience class. But it's like water was like, God to him.
Yeah.
He was gravitating to every bit of water he ever saw. So, if I didn't want a dog that liked swimming, I probably shouldn't have gotten a retriever,
Yes.
Whatever. But the thing is, so there's a bunch of things that create behavior. And a lot of times the humans are one of the biggest pieces of it. So there's bad, bad physical behavior, bad emotional behavior. There's different things. So, it's a combination between the connection between the human, the animals sometimes absorbing some negative energies from the humans. Like I've had somebody once call me about her animals, and there was all this problem, and then she's like whispering in the phone going, "We're getting a divorce, but we haven't told the animals yet."
Oh,
and I'm like, okay, so you really believe that they
Right.
don't know what's going on in your household? And, it was like, so the animals were acting up because, of course, there was so much uncertainty, and the people were uncertain, and they didn't know where they were going to land. And, even a good divorce, you know what I mean, if
Right.
there's such a thing, even one that's done sort of fairly, humanely. But so there's so many things. So a part of it is so many times they're absorbing our imbalanced energy. That's one piece of it. And then there's other people who don't train their animals or even learn about what needs to be done. Like animals like a solid leader. Like for example, in dogs, the way the dogs are pack animals, and as soon as you bring a dog into your family, they're part of your pack. And there's always going to be a leader in every pack, and every member of a pack has a pecking order. And dogs aren't comfortable or settled till they know who's who and what's what with that. So they're going to, if you're not a good leader for them, they're going to become the leader because they need it, many of them, not every single one. But so there's so many parts that come into play, but so much. When I do this work and there's issues, it's not just about the animals. It's so much about the people and the relationship. And even when I do consultations, I give my clients exercises and things to do with the animal to, number one, help the animal, and I also will suggest things to do for themselves. Like, I interestingly enough, I have a line of flower essences for animals, And when I have someone give the essence to their animals, I have them give it to the whole family, humans and animals together, because then it kind of harmonizes all the energy, and it helps clear out whatever's coming off the people, and that the animals are absorbing like sponges, which might be making them do some of this, behavior.
Right. Oh, I love that you work with the flower essences. Yes, that definitely shifts the vibration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's so much. Like, once I'll just tell you a funny story. Once there was a couple in Canada. I'm Canadian, but I'm in Arizona right now. But when I lived in Canada, there was a couple who had 2 cats, and one of them was urinating, like, in very strange places. Like, I mean, would get up on the kitchen counter and urinate on the kitchen counter when they were gone, was urinating in electrical light sockets.
Oh,
just
dear.
doing these crazy things, right? And they were having to put foil everywhere, every morning before they went to work, and then they'd have to, take it all off when they came home to, they were really tired of it. And I talked to both cats. They didn't really know which cat it was, but I talked to both cats. And the cat that was doing it did fess up. And I can't remember all the details, but we had an amazing session and counseling and everything, and that cat stopped urinating like that cold turkey. And, that's probably a really amazing situation, but there was, whatever it was, we hit on it, and I mean, they were thrilled and sent me this, big testimonial, and it's not that we could do this with every single being. They were also very open-minded and willing to take on whatever it was that they might have been doing that might have created this. But sometimes it's funny how animals are when they have any kind of problem, horses, cats, dogs, whatever. Sometimes just having an ear to listen to them, what's going on, is enough to shift things.
Yes.
It's really amazing. It's just like people. You feel bad, you go tell someone your whole long story, and then it's off your shoulders and you feel better.
Can everybody that works with you then hear their pets? Do you ever have people that go, I keep trying and I'm just not getting it?
Here's how I like to say it, how I like to phrase it. It is a journey more than a destination. So, and one of the things I talk about is that there's 3 paths. I believe, and this is what I've seen over years, and I've been teaching this since the early 90s. What I see is that there's 3 pathways. So each of us comes in with our unique gifts to healing and animal communication. So we've got these innate gifts within us, and then we there's 3 different pathways that we activate the gifts. So, for example, if let's say we had 3 different people learning from me at the same time. First of all, so we come in with our innate gifts, and then we come in with our prior experience and trainings, and then our environmental influences and all that. So we're all so unique already to begin with coming in. So the way some people will get it will be different than the way other people will get it. So some people will actually be hearing words. Some people will see more pictures. Some people will get what I call claircognizance, which is more, it's like we know it.
Yeah, I have
and we
that.
know what their answer is, but we can't exactly, we didn't get it in a picture, we didn't get it in words. And then there's the clairsentience where they can feel it. So there's like the four clairs we can get it from any of those 4 clairs, and there's really other ones too. But so I say to my students, it's a journey, not a destination, because, and I have the way I built my program was I built in checks and balances for each type of learner, because, and so not everybody's going to get it exactly the way they want, as quickly as they want, but here's the interesting thing I've noticed. When they stick with it and they actually do the work, and, some of it's inner work on ourselves, then it always comes together, But it's just like if you were driving from, I don't know if you ever listened to Abraham. They always talked about Phoenix to San Diego or
yes.
Phoenix to Yuma or whatever. And I mean, you could get on a detour. You could get a flat tire. You could meet someone interesting in quartzsite and stop for a week, whatever, So it's sort of like things will come together when you stick with it. I'm convinced of that, and I believe every single person has the ability to do it. And it's just and some of it, a big part of it, is even mindset and belief system.
Yes.
Just like anything, if you believe you can do something, you will. And sometimes I have to work with students a bit on mindset. Everybody has their own pieces to work on, and not giving up and not getting frustrated. But it's amazing. I mean, I had a girl start, I don't know, let's say maybe a year ago or less, into one of my programs, and she's now gone through 3 levels, and she didn't even know what a chakra was. She honestly had never even heard. She lives in the southeast of the country and didn't know what a chakra was, and she is channeling this higher information that is phenomenal now. And she didn't know what a chakra was, you know. But she was probably one of the fastest, you know. And then there's slower people, but it all pans out.
And it's such a great journey, because I've noticed that the more that I connect through the energy field with people, working with people and working on myself, the more I connect with my cat, and vice versa. You know, the less I pay attention. So it all serves for all of the good. It's not just the people path or the pet path. It really is all one path.
Yeah, we are all one. I mean, the animals truly already know all this. It's the humans that we have to, you know, I truly believe that all beings will start to communicate. All humans will be able to communicate telepathically with the animal kingdom and the natural world. It goes beyond the animals. It goes, you know, to the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the insects, everything. It goes, you know, right down to things you may not even want to communicate with. But the thing is, true. Once humanity really gets to the place where they understand this divine wisdom that all living things have to share, that's when true oneness will prevail. And I mean, we're heading there. The more of us that are doing this, the more it is creating that kind of a feeling, and more people are starting to understand energetically what is really going on, you know, in this you know, universe. And it to me, it's amazing. And even if you only ever feel what your animal feels, or you only ever just know and you don't hear their words, I mean, we're all different, and it can be incredibly powerful, and you can like determine their blocks and imbalances and release them, and have a huge impact on their lives. Like to me, if I can make another being's life better, that is amazing to me. That's just one of the greatest things I can do. So I never, you know, discount anything anybody gets when it comes to this kind of work.
Beautiful, beautiful message. Thank you for sharing all of that. I totally resonate with that. And to the extent that I don't like to kill anything anymore. I mean anything. So when I have a pest in my house, I actually invite it to leave and encourage it to leave. And it usually does. It's amazing. We just don't have to go around pushing our way through this world. Life will respond and react with us and communicate with us when we open to it. I agree with that completely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, what do you have coming up that you'd like to tell us about? Anything exciting?
Well, I have a free webinar, which I think you have the link to.
Yes.
I have a free webinar called Connect on Demand, How to Master Animal Communication. That is really informative and gets into a lot of the details. It's, I think the next one is this coming Wednesday. It's about like 75 to 80 minutes roughly, and it gets into a lot more depth about it. I would say that any of your listeners who are interested in this would really enjoy that webinar.
Well, I'm going to be there. It sounds great. I can't wait. And I look forward to doing more work with you. I think it's wonderful that you're doing what you're doing. And I have to tell you, so Mario has a cat that is usually quite active during these interviews, and you must have connected with his cat, because she has been sleeping at my feet the entire conversation. She hasn't moved. That's so unusual.
You know what's funny? They'll always react in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I have pictures. My students we have a private, secret Facebook forum for the people who are in the program, so we can all interact with each other. And so many of my students have sent in pictures where they're actually watching the videos of my training on their computer, and their cat is in front of, like, pushing in front of them, to, like, on the desk, watching and even pawing at the videos. And it's so funny because we always joke that the animals are watching the videos too. And you know, some of them, one girl was taking pictures of her horses to send into the class, and this one horse that's a complete ham just came up and stuck his head in like he was photobombing the whole shot. Like, and he had his teeth showing and a big smile on his face. And I mean, we had some pretty funny things happen.
That is awesome.
Animals, I know, they're hilarious.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I can't wait for your webinar. I know some of our listeners are going to join me in that, and we're going to have some fun. I like to ask my guests if you have a parting thought that you'd like to leave us with today.
My parting thought, I think, would be that to really open your heart as much as you can to all living beings being as one, and really being conscious about it and knowing that on some level you are connected to every single living being in this universe, and to really treat all beings that way, with that understanding, and really understand that there's so much wisdom to be had for us when we connect to the other beings on that deeper level.
Perfect. I couldn't have ended better myself. Thank you so much for your time today and for all that you're doing.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Would you like to be a guest on Exploring Possibilities? Drop me a note at info@journeyofpossibilities.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Exploring Possibilities.